Hi, everybody. Welcome to What's the Buzz? My name is Elizabeth Gordon Hammersley, and I am the customer evangelist here at IntroHive. I just wanted to take a minute to welcome everybody. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day today to join us. We realize your time is extremely valuable, and we really appreciate you spending it with us. The session really today aims for you to have access and hear directly from our customers how they are working with IntroHive and using customer intelligence to find, win, and grow business. And today we are joined by Suzanne Reed, the Chief Growth and Marketing Officer at LBMC. LBMC is one of the largest professional service providers located in Tennessee, and they have over 10,000 clients with a diverse needs and from multiple different industries. They have become industry leaders in finance, human resources, in technology, information security, and wealth advisory, and they have over 600 employees backing up and supporting all of those great clients. Suzanne has been a customer of ours since 2018. I mean, 2018 doesn't seem long ago, but when you think about it, it's about 4 or 5 years. So she's been on a fantastic journey with us. We have learned and grown together over these past 4 or 5 years. And today you're really going to hear from Suzanne about how LBMC has been using IntroHive and using customer intelligence and the journey that they've been on and the success that they've been having. But before we jump in, I just wanted to remind everybody that we do have a Q&A section, but feel free to pop it in the chat as well. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in there. At the end of the session today, we will get to all of your questions. If for some reason we do not get to all of your questions, we will be sure to follow up directly with you, so no worries there. That is our main goal, to make sure that we are providing as much information and value and answering any questions that you do have. So let's jump into it. Suzanne, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much. Glad to be here, Elizabeth. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for joining us. I'm super excited to talk about the LBMC journey today. And to start off, I think it would be remiss if we didn't go back to 2018 and kind of start with that trigger moment or that problem that you were looking to solve at LBMC, and really how you came across IntroHive and how IntroHive became a solution and an opportunity that you felt would help LBMC.
Sure. Thank you, Elizabeth. Yeah, I think the main kind of trigger point for me, first of all, I think I had been at LBMC, in just a few years. At the point we had put in, they had made the decision prior to my joining that we were going to Microsoft as our CRM. We are actually the collection of 7 companies together, so you can imagine. But obviously positive, we put it all into one CRM. So truly client intelligence from across 7 different companies. So you can imagine kind of the push in of that, all the data that went in. So a big thrust, and a big thought process I had is, okay, how can we make this system work for us collectively, both at individual company levels, but then at the bigger picture level, because really that data was our number one asset. And it was really, we talk here at LBMC every day about relationships is really what we're all about. Yes, we help people with taxes. Yes, we help people with audits. Yes, we're helping supply technology and human resources and staffing. But it's all based on the premise that we have great relationships with business leaders and we help them solve problems. And so how do we continue to cultivate that in a really institutional way? And so the CRM was kind of that linchpin, if you will, but the struggle became the data's bad. And I'm sure none of y'all have ever heard that, right? The data's bad, it's outdated. Who's going to update it? Marketing, we need you to update it. Take the next 2 years, and all your team does is update the data. And my immediate response was, well, how do we know what the right information is? You're the ones with the relationship. So how do we make that an easy process? So we did what I believe many firms, our size are doing, and we're in the top 40 of firms. And so we're fairly large. We're growing at a 15 to 20% clip every year, adding more and more in there, but at the same time trying to clean. So the question became, how can we do that so that it's easy for all, it's visible for all, and we're transparent across all companies? So if I'm changing a client that's actually a client of 4 companies, I'm not messing something up for another company. And that became a really big concern. And then where's our single source of data? And we finally, one of my big asks is we need to make CRM our true single source of data. And if that's true, then that's where we need to put our emphasis. So in Steps IntroHive, I actually was at a growth conference, and IntroHive was there, and it was actually quite a few. It's probably more tainted towards the law industry than it even was at that point, than towards professional, or towards, I guess I should say, accounting and advisory type firms. And talking with them, obviously very similar scenarios, right? The attorneys, we don't need a $450 an hour per, data entry cleanup. How can we make that happen? So big trigger was, how do we keep our data clean? How do we even start that process? And how do we make it visible, easily done, but at the same time encourage that ongoing good data hygiene in CRM, so that we're not just fixing constantly, we're solving for kind of that future look. And so that IntroHive, the thrust really was around, this could be a daily thing, so it becomes part of our DNA, it becomes part of our hygiene, it becomes part of our CRM process. Yes, we have some kind of cleanup projects where we need to do some big cleanup, we need to do some duplicate changes, etc. But IntroHive can help us with that too. So that thrust was what put me kind of in the IntroHive spot. I'll tell you though, what became an ancillary piece as I began to sell it internally, I'm going to have to either go hire a team out of the country, or I'm going to have to figure out how to do this internally. Well, what if we use IntroHive and we make it incumbent and we spread it across all? That becomes an easier, palatable solution at the same time. And then what if we serve up some great intelligence about those clients that you all have in the past maybe not had access to, or you had to go hunt and peck to find? And so that became the second impetus. And then that became an aha moment. I think everybody started to see the dots start to be connected, that we're not just talking about data cleanup for sake of data cleanup. We're talking about, this is starting an ecosystem that then allows our company to use our data for growth and for the business, and not just a marketing exercise of, we need a clean database so we can send an email. And so I think that was the real turning point. I also had an advocate in the firm on our technology side that had seen some of their clients using similar tools, not necessarily IntroHive. And at the time, there weren't a lot of tools like this, and they saw the negatives and the positive. And so, of course, when they saw IntroHive, they said, this appears to be answering what our clients are saying they want out in the marketplace and what we need. So it became almost a third-party kind of endorsement for me internally. And so we kind of took that and ran with kind of a two-prong approach.
That's incredible. And a couple of things you touched on there in terms of, having the 7 companies, the different silos. I think regardless if you have multiple companies or you're one company, I think every company can relate to having silos and not having that access to all the different information within your company and the different arms that are going out and maybe pitching to a client. Maybe there's multiple arms going out and pitching to a client. So that synergy across those silos, I think, certainly helps. And then, of course, to your point, the growth and the use cases that really IntroHive and customer intelligence can offer, because I really do believe it is across the spectrum. To your point, a lot of the times our customers can join on and, it's really for data enrichment and data cleaning. And then they realize there's a whole plethora of use cases that they could be using customer intelligence for. Right. And that's why I'm so excited for us to talk today, because I think that's exactly the journey that LBMC has been on. And to see where you are now in 2023 and where you were in 2018 is really exciting. So I'm excited to dig in there and talk a little bit more about that. In terms of, obviously you discovered IntroHive, you discovered those great use cases for it. What were the immediate benefits that you kind of felt initially turning on IntroHive and the platform?
Yeah. So immediate benefits, kind of to trigger even off what you just said, Elizabeth, is, you take just like how we treat our clients, right? You're going to want to solve their immediate need. So one of the reasons why I went to the data hygiene is because that was an immediate need I was trying to solve for. I had buy-in. We needed to solve for it. And, bringing in some kind of systematic program that can help us and partner that can help us really change the conversation. And to her point, and then became that growth and business conversation. And so really, as we looked, the immediate benefits started to become, okay, now we've got visibility into where our data really is poor, and why it's poor. So what processes can we change to make that better? What elements in our company, behavioral things, training, reminders, who's touching the data as they're entering it. So it really opened up a whole host of opportunities for us to really get into. It's a lot of times it's behavioral, right? The putting in the data, how important is it that they put the data in? And then what we do with the data once it's there. A lot of people didn't understand the importance of it. So, as we talked about serving up that great proactive data, then we started to take it a little step further and say, okay, now we've launched it and we're going to tell you how many hours you've saved. And we did use that as a big benefit on the front end. Okay, partner A, we just saved you 5 hours. And I will tell you, I had some partners who immediately said, oh my gosh, that was so much easier. You have no idea how much time you've saved me.
Wow.
And, so for them, that was an immediate benefit, right? And it was something that if we had gone to them and asked them to do on their own, honestly, we probably would have never gotten it done, right? We would have the client work would have always fallen out first. This would have fallen to the bottom. So that was a real big plus. We really used that internally as a continuing selling point. But then the second point became, Elizabeth, what you talked about, that collaborative effort. And again, remember, this was before COVID, but the collaborative effort of, I am now seeing that X company has had a CEO change. And I didn't realize that because I'm dealing with the CIO, the CFO, or the director of accounting or the controller. And it just kind of conjured up some different thoughts to people about, what, now might be a good time for us to reach back out to them about, cybersecurity, and get in front of them and make sure they understand we do these things. And so it really started to very much become a prompt for a cross-sell and prompt for additional collaborative efforts across the firm in a very organic way, which I think, again, is very much LBMC. And we've grown so fast. It used to be you walked down the hall and you just opened someone's doors and said, hey, there's a client I want to make sure you meet. Well, as we all know, that world has changed dramatically on all of us over the last couple of years, was forced on us. And, I think every day our platforms and our structures we had in place, we would have been like many of our competitors who really struggled to kind of keep up during COVID because they didn't have this collaborative effort already. And, I don't know how comfortable your shareholders or partners are picking up the phone and saying what's going on at this company, because again, they're so busy taking care of clients. They need the prompts, they need the help, and they appreciate, we call them shortcuts and quick hits and ways for them to think about serving their client in better ways. And again, at the end of the day, you can talk about it as cross-sell, but those are the things that drive revenue, they drive client retention, and it drives, trust with our clients. And so those are big things that we're always talking about. It also reinforces the relationship aspect, which we believe is a big strength of ours. And so you think all the time about technology doesn't add to your relationships. It really does if you're using it in the right ways, and making it kind of part of your DNA and your behavioral. I had a very wise man once say to me, you don't want the technology to come between you and the client, but you absolutely want the technology to serve your client even better. And to me, I continue to remember that. And I think we see that happening in so many industries today. When it's done well, the technology complements the personal relationship. It doesn't come between it.
That's such a good point. And I think that's exactly where customer intelligence comes into play, especially nowadays. So when you were saying, and like exactly what you touched on, I know you and I have talked about this multiple times about how the global we has really had to adapt in the last few years, especially with COVID. And the way that we work is very different than what we've done previously. And to your point, I think this kind of solution and this platform is something that was important before and is just as important, if not more important, to your point,
Absolutely.
now in the way that we work today. So, to dive in a little bit deeper in terms of how you've been using IntroHive and the data that you've been receiving, I'd love to touch on your top 50 campaign and just walk us through kind of what that campaign is and how IntroHive played a role in that and how the customer intelligence really helped you kind of identify those top 50 and try to find ways to broaden and deepen your relationship with those top 50.
Yeah, so a big part, probably half of my team spends, they're very aligned with the business. And the number one thing we continue to hear, and we're hearing it in our industry, I think, especially in the traditional kind of accounting audit, advisory is taking on a much bigger lead, if you will, in that industry. We think that, as we go futuristically and looking at kind of where we're going, advisory services are starting to play. And that requires an even stronger relationship and an even stronger sell. There's no regulatory or compliance behind it that forces someone to do it. So you really, it creates a different environment for us in our selling aspect. And so one of the things we wanted to test was our relationships we already have. And so we wanted to kind of start with that top 50 because a big belief we have is keeping our current clients and growing our current clients is probably 80% of our business every year. We absolutely have to add, and I refuse to call it new logos because that's not relationship oriented. I call it new clients, new relationships. We absolutely do that every year. That's very important to us because we don't obviously want to get stale. If you're not growing, you're dying. But our current clients are very important to us, and we want to put that emphasis and make sure they get the best of LBMC. And so we wanted to, many of firms our size are talking about that client account management, that client account service. How do you structure that? So we came up with a project called the Client Quarterback, and we had a little bit of fun with it around football and teams and how do you do it. And I have to say I was pleasantly surprised about how many of our shareholders kind of got excited about having a little bit of fun around taking care of their clients. And we created teams and we had names. And one of the very first things we looked at is here's our top 50 clients. Who has the best relationship with them? And that became a very interesting conversation because, of course, you ask certain ones. And, of course, we have names and fields and CRM. But then as we did a little deeper dive and we used IntroHive to say, but who's touching base with them? Who's talking to them consistently? Who has the best relationship at the C-suite level? Who had the most recent touch? It became a very different conversation. And so then we started to get into, so what does that mean? Well, let's test that out. So we considered this a pilot. And we took those relationship scores from IntroHive and we basically said, you may show as the client shareholder, but what our records are showing is this person has the most continuous relationship with them as far as reaching out, going to lunch, sending them emails, getting emails from the client. And it looks like they have the widest relationship. They talk to the majority of the people. We had some where we found we didn't have any shareholders talking to them at all. And that was another eye opener. And so then we found a shareholder and said, you need to start serving in this role. So it was a really great exercise for us to have. And IntroHive was a key part. We got many asks on how did you decide that shareholder was going to be the client quarterback for that client? I work on their stuff. Well, we said, well, but it doesn't look like you've had any communications with them for 3 months. And this person has been conversing with them consistently. And so that was a great exercise for it to not be a personal, subjective point, but to be more of a very objective point. So we had some really good conversations internally. I will tell you that exercise also from a customer intelligence, us giving them some information and showing them what we're looking at and how they could use it started to become a tool that many of them started to use as the team started to look at how can we help this client? Where are some opportunities where we have some real ability to add some value? And that became some great tools for them to use. And since that's also then spread to, we've had a few new shareholders join us, and we've had a few new senior managers join us who have more of a business development mindset. And they've immediately started to say, this is fabulous. Now I don't have to call or email 15 people. I can go into IntroHive and I can start with the one who has the strongest relationship to see if there's any opportunity for me to get an appointment and kind of offer up some services that I think that company would really benefit from. So it's become a great tool to use, both from a customer intelligence knowledge, but also from a kind of a future looking, how do we expand? How do we keep them? How do we make sure that we're talking with them? How do we make sure we've got the right people in front of that client, both for retention and for future value add to that client, to make sure that we're not forgetting about them and we're offering the best that we need to be offering to create that trust so that we have the opportunity to offer them advisory services.
Right. And you touched on something that I know we talk about often, and many of us, even outside this conversation, talk about that gut feel that I think we all try to do the guessing game with relationships or with some of our work. And really, it's that knowing, that data point to your point, that kind of can back up. And to your point, if someone comes and asks a question, whether it's just a personal question about the relationship, or whether it is a little bit more in the weeds in terms of what are the additional data points that we can see with this customer or see internally, which is really, really valuable. And so I guess right now, because I know we're coming up on time, so I'd like to ask, what are you most excited about next with customer intelligence, or what are your team kind of looking at as you move into kicking off the new year?
We, and again, I mentioned it several times, but, really just taking care of our clients. And I mentioned top 50, but that was really just a pilot, right? We really want to kind of start to do that with all of our clients. And I would even say, our single service clients, really kind of looking at them to see where we can add the value and, talking to them intelligently about what we're doing for them. I can't tell you how many clients are impressed when we're able to come to them and say, here are all the things we're doing for you. And we know you're speaking with these people, and we know these people have been talking to you about new services. How are we doing as LBMC? And, I think they really appreciate that, because, we assume that because we're calling on that client, or we know that client, or we're dealing with that client, that they know everything going on in their company. And sometimes they don't know everything going on in their own company that we're doing for them. And so the fact that we can come to them with a total picture and information, I think really, so I love the fact that IntroHive really encourages us to be collaborators, because our clients really value that. And I think they see that versus us just coming in, at 10 or 15 different entry points. I'm also very excited about, I think from a collaborative effort, now that we are very remote and we have so many people in so many different places, and people aren't in the office every day, and we're not, passing each other in the halls, that ability to have that collaboration in the system and people to look at it and to be able to share those notes, and they know who's reaching out to clients, who's doing what, and who's got the strongest relationship. They really do see those things as value and as time savers and as ways to make us all better. And it just really reinforces our whole relationship process. But we've got a tool now that kind of contains it all. And I think that has added a lot of value to our individuals. And, not even to mention the proactiveness of the emails that help us keep our data clean, and the proactiveness of the emails that tell us what's going on, from a media perspective, or what's going on from leaderships changing. And, again, someone may know that, but not everyone. And so the fact that those pieces of information are proactively sent, our team loves that proactive. They love to get things pushed to them. I think they stress when they believe they've got to go find those things. And so that's been a really big win. And I'm excited about that because I see our teams getting excited and using it and seeing the benefit. And that client intelligence and customer intelligence continues to become something that is important to us, not because it's data and not because we're cleaning it up, but because it is who LBMC is. It's what we're about. You can't have relationships without having that client intelligence and information. So I'm very excited about that.
That's great. And yeah, I think we've discussed a couple times how IntroHive and LBMC, I think, are very passionate about obviously our customers. And working with LBMC has been just such a pleasure because seeing how customer centric the business really is, and the benefit that has brought to yourselves, and the success has obviously been there because of the customer centricity that you've kind of instilled in the company, I think is really something to admire. Just to jump in, I think we have a couple questions from those who have joined us today. One question I do have is they would love to know what first best steps or early victories their company could benefit from by working with IntroHive. Maybe the first best steps. I know you talked about some of the early victories that LBMC kind of had, but maybe the first best steps might be an interesting one if they're looking to purchase something like customer intelligence.
Yeah, well, I think what they're asking first best steps is make sure you know what problem you are solving for. I think what's great about IntroHive is there's several different entry points you can come in, but I think if you treat it like we treat our clients, they want you to solve their problem that they feel like they have. While we may be excited about the 5 other things that IntroHive will solve, I think you got to zero it in on what's the number one problem today. And my number one problem at the time happened to be, how am I going to clean this data up so that people trust it and use it and continue to enter and continue to update it? Because it's only as good as what's going in and what we have. So my first best step to you would be make sure if what you're trying to sell it on, that's a problem that people see you need to solve. And so if customer intelligence and relationship information is what you're trying to solve for, I would absolutely sell it on that. The data hygiene then becomes icing on the cake, right? So again, you need to know, I think, what your company's big problem is. Because I've learned, I think in my experience, if you try to go in with, it's going to solve all 6 of these things, people get distracted and they can't hear the big. And I think you can do a better job with your ROI. Hopefully that helps. If it doesn't, I'm happy to answer anything else on that.
I think that's great advice. I think that is wise advice, because I think like what we've touched on today, and like you just said, customer intelligence can really cater to a number of different use cases. So I think that's a very sage advice to, start with your immediate need, and then there's always room to grow.
Absolutely.
We do have one other question here, and feel free to post a couple more questions. We do have a couple minutes left. But this is from Corey. Corey says, can you share a bit more about how IntroHive data entry and data cleansing product works, or how maybe you used it at LBMC? So whether that's cleanse or whether that's just, how you do the data entry or what your team looks like. And I was just going to say, actually, Corey, we can follow up with you and give you a nice rundown on our product cleanse that you may have heard about. But I do believe that we can follow up with kind of deeper information for Corey, but just curious too. I think he's just wondering how LBMC, how'd you go about that data entry and data cleansing?
Sure. We had kind of one program person that ran it. And she happened to be on my team at the time. She's actually on the enterprise technology team now, but she ran the project in that we started with a pilot team, and we obviously IntroHive, you get the option to let them ingest all of your data. so that they can kind of be looking at all of that and kind of doing the data cleansing. And then you have the option of setting up, how are you going to push that, back out to your teams? And so we opted to push out the weekly email where our teams could actually click to say, yes, I want to change those things, because we wanted them to have trust in the system and the data. And we have a lot of privately held middle market clients. And so sometimes there could be one thing off. And so we wanted our people to know that what was getting changed. And so we wanted them to feel like they had control. So they get a summary email and they can do the click. Truly, it is one click, and then it updates CRM for them. They loved that. We were worried at first that they would think, well, I have to do something. But what they felt like was they had control. They could look at what's getting changed. It reminded them something was getting changed. And then they could validate it, push the button, and it was done. And, again, as simple as doing it, they could do it on their phone. They could do it on their desktop. They really, really liked that. Everything works through Outlook. Our people are very comfortable through Outlook. There's other options, but we chose to do the Outlook option. We also reported the data changes that were happening on a weekly basis, and our people were amazed at the numbers. And then we equated that back to dollars and time so that they could kind of see, as we were spreading it across, 50 people or 100 people, one person may have 5 hours, but as we added it up across, I think they kind of saw the numbers and how that really came out, but the data quality. And then we started doing data quality checks so we could kind of tell them fields that were missing, fields that had been updated, and again, started to create that trust in the data. And, again, as soon as you update the data, there's something else, right? Data is never 100% clean. I mean, hopefully we all know that. I've been working in this for 30 years, and I'm very much a data geek. And the one thing I learned early on is, as soon as you think you've got your data clean, something else comes along. It's never clean because there's always things changing. But we gave I think there was a lot of trust in that process. It's worked really, really well to have them see it and validate it. I know there's other ways you can do it. You can have all the changes occur and not have them validate. They also can set their own reminders up if they wanted to change that cadence. We let them do that too. Hopefully that helps, Corey. If not, I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Thanks, Suzanne. No, I appreciate that. And Corey just followed up and said he's looking at that data cleansing, practically thinking about the upsell with Intro Hive. So already a customer of ours, and looking kind of to do that deeper dive into cleansing the data, which I know, your team has looked at as well and has kind of done a deeper dive in that cleanse product. But that's all really great information. Thank you so much. I know we are up on time, but I just wanted to thank you so much, Suzanne, for joining us today. Always enjoy the conversation. Thank you so much for sharing kind of the LBMC journey. We really appreciate it. And I just wanted to let everybody know that What's the Buzz is a reoccurring series. We will be back in April. Stay tuned. We will be sending out communication soon with who we'll be speaking with next. But we hope that this is valuable for you, and we hope that you learned something from Suzanne today and the LBMC story. And we look forward to chatting again. Suzanne, we'll be in touch. I'll chat with you soon. And thank you again, everybody. Take care.
Thank you all. Have a great day.